Hi folks, and welcome into the Truck King YouTube channel. This is the Jeep Wrangler, specifically the 2025 Wrangler 41 Willys Special Edition. This is one of the absolute best off-road vehicles you can buy that comes straight from the dealership. It's basically the bar in the OEM off-road industry that everyone is aiming for, and I'm curious if this, the all-new redesigned 2026 Honda Passport, comes anywhere close to that bar. So in this video, we're going to take both of these SUVs off-road. We're going to compare the features inside out and underneath to see if the Honda Passport can even hang on a trail with the Jeep Wrangler. Let's dive into it right now. Let's talk powertrains now, and the two models we have today are very different. So over here in the Honda, that's a 3.5 liter naturally aspirated V6, and that's the only engine you're gonna get in your Passport mated to a 10-speed automatic. Over here in the Wrangler, this is the 4xe model. That means it's a plug-in hybrid. So it mates a 2-liter inline 4 turbocharged engine to a 17.4 kilowatt hour battery pack. You're getting about 42 kilometers of all electric range out of this thing, which is pretty cool. And then overall system output, yeah, the Wrangler here makes a lot more power than this Honda does. You can see that right here. So it's going to be interesting to get out on the trail today and feel the difference between, this semi-electric setup and then just an old school naturally aspirated V6 in the Honda. Let's just compare styling now. So over here with the Wrangler, this is iconic styling, and there's a reason why Wrangler styling really never changes throughout the generations. Now this one you're looking at here is the Willys 41 Special Edition. 41 because that's the first year, 1941, that the Willys Overland Company built a Jeep, and that's where the color inspiration comes from, this olive drab paint job on the exterior, the wheels, and on the interior. And again, what else can you say about Wrangler styling? It's iconic. Now over here on the Passport for 2026, this thing looks entirely different. I think it looks way more rugged and tough than the model it is replacing. And this is a sunset orange paint job, which is exclusive to the Trailsport model. I think it looks great, but now I need to toss it out to you guys. Honestly, drop in the comments and let me know your real opinions. Which one of these two looks better? Let's talk about all the equipment you get in these packages. So when you go for the Willys model, this is the budget off-roader in the lineup. So you're getting a bunch of upgrades which are meant to go off-road, but it's not as hardcore or as expensive as that top trim Rubicon. So what am I talking about? First of all, a set of 33-inch tires. Those are BFG KO2s. I'm surprised not to see KO3s there, but yeah, still rocking the KO2s. You're getting steel bumpers in the front and the rear. Those are always nice with these great integrated recovery points on them. You're getting a set of rock rails down the side, which are good for protection. And this model comes with a locking rear differential. So a lot of those off-road upgrades have come to the Willys. Now let's go look at the Passport. So this is the Trailsport model. And when you go Trailsport, that's also bringing along off-road focused upgrades. So you're also getting a set of all-terrain tires. In this case, they're from General Grabber, but they're only just under 31 inches, so not a huge tire. You're also getting front recovery points down there, skid plates underneath, and this thing gets standard all-wheel drive, and that's another big difference here. This is an all-wheel drive setup. Over there, that is a classic four-wheel drive setup with a transfer case in the Wrangler. You're not going to find that stuff over here in the Passport. Let's compare the overall size now, and the Passport is actually a larger vehicle. So overall length on the Honda is 191.5 inches. Overall width is 79.4 inches, while the wheelbase comes in at 113.6 inches. And if you're wondering about the off-road stuff, ground clearance on the Passport Trailsport is 8.3 inches, while the approach and departure come in at 23 degrees for approach and 27.1 for the departure angle. Now for the Wrangler, it carries an overall length of 188.4 inches. It has an overall width at 73.9 inches, so quite a bit skinnier than the Honda, but it does have a wheelbase at 118.4 inches. So even though the Wrangler is shorter and skinnier, it has a longer wheelbase. Now talking about approach and departure, the Wrangler absolutely stands out in this area compared to this Honda, and honestly compared to just about any vehicle on the market. The approach on this Willys 4xe comes in at 43.8 degrees, departure comes in at 35.6 degrees, while the ground clearance measures in at 10.8 inches. Let's take a closer look underneath the Passport, starting with the tow hooks, and it's got really nice big beefy tow hooks up here. They're finished in orange, which is cool. And another thing I'll point out is Honda said specifically that these are rated at over twice the GVWR of the vehicle, so basically twice the weight of the vehicle when it's fully loaded, but they're also designed to break away in a collision. And I can't really see what's going on up under here, but yeah, this hook comes all the way back into here. The bolt is honestly looks more like a pivot point in there. So there's a lot going on with this design, which is different, and that's all about crash safety. So that's sort of neat to see. Now moving back, I like to see there's barely any gap here, and this plastic front fascia is actually bolted up. A lot of times that can just be left there dangling, but it's very nicely tucked up. And then another thing I love to see, and this is on pretty much every Honda product, this is a jack point, and they actually write jack right on it. They're telling you, yeah, if you want to lift up your nose, you can use this spot right here, which is cool. Now I'll use my magnet and show you that is a steel skid plate in the middle right there, but over here, that's actually a plastic skid plate, no doubt some composite plastic of some kind. Same with over here. So yeah, it's only steel right in the center. On the outsides, it is plastic. Now, as we roll back, you're also going to notice, of course, this is independent suspension all the way around. There are no solid axles here. That's going to look very different from our Jeep Wrangler. Now the next thing we get to is this big kind of fabric piece, and I'll tell you, this is all about aerodynamics here, but you can already see the problem. There's little holes in it and they're just going to get worn out. If this gets caught on a stick, it's going to rip. Sticks could easily get through this. Rocks could get through this. I don't love seeing this stuff on any off-road vehicle. I understand it's for aero. It's going to save you on the highway. That's great. But if you're taking this thing off-road often, yeah, expect that this is probably going to get ripped off of there. Another thing I noticed, this little tail fin here on the exhaust, and that appears to be for aerodynamics as well. I've never seen anything like that, but cool to see that Honda added it there, helping out with your fuel economy, and I don't think that's going to get in the way off-road. Now moving further back, we get to the fuel tank, and that's actually a steel skid plate, so that's awesome. I love to see a nice steel skid plate on the fuel tank. At the back end, again, independent suspension, and if you want to know where the spare tire is, it's actually in the back underneath the floor. Now we're here underneath the Wrangler. So first of all, tow hooks, and I actually can't even see them down here because they're up there on top of the bumper. I like seeing those up there. They're easy to get to. Even if this front end was buried down in the mud or something, you're still going to be able to access those. Now, I already pointed it out, but I'll show you. That's a steel front bumper, and it goes directly into a steel front skid plate. Absolutely no gap there, which I love to see. Now, immediately behind this skid plate, you're gonna notice this looks very different than the Honda Passport, and that's because this is a solid front and solid rear axle. There's not even many vehicles on the market that offer two solid axles anymore, so that's unique here in the Wrangler. The other thing is the Wrangler is a body-on-frame vehicle. You can see these big steel frame rails versus the Honda, which is unibody. Now, generally, it is thought that body-on-frame is going to last longer, especially when you're being rough on it, when you're taking it off-road. And that's because you can mess up the body on this Wrangler and it doesn't affect the frame. It's still going to drive the same. Where with a unibody vehicle, if you damage the body enough, you compromise the entire structure. So yes, I think for going off-road, especially frequently and doing some intense off-roading, body-on-frame will serve you better for longer. Now, as we roll back, the other thing here in this Jeep, which is not in the Honda, is right here. That is a transfer case. And also keep in mind, this engine is longitudinally mounted, whereas the Honda's engine is transverse mounted. So the power pops out back here out of the back of the transmission, goes into the transfer case, and then goes back forward into that front axle. Now, let's get back to skid plates here, and I like to see this. The T-case gets a skid plate, that's steel. This is the battery pack here. It gets a skid plate. That is steel. The fuel tank over here gets a skid plate, and that is steel. You're obviously sensing a theme here. Another little skid plate up here, also steel. Yes, the Wrangler doesn't mess around with any plastic, any aluminum. It's all steel all the way back, which I like to see. Now finally, I'll mention the spare tire, and of course it's iconic on the Wrangler. It's out there hanging off the back. One more word underneath the Wrangler. I wanted to point out that the rock sliders here are mounted up here to the bottom of the rocker panel, which is frustrating because the frame rail is right here. It's so close. It's always better to mount these straight onto the frame rails. Then it's going to protect your body. And if you do put too much weight on them, it's not going to mess up the bottom of your rocker panel. Now, I'm sure these are tested by Jeep and Mopar, so they're probably pretty dang strong, but still, I feel like the right way to do this would have been to bolt them directly over here to the frame. Let's talk cameras and off-road technology inside now. We're here in the Wrangler, and the camera system here is simple. It's just a rear view camera. That's all you're getting here in this Willis 41 Special Edition. And one of the things I don't like is that Jeep added this larger screen, but the camera only uses half of it. Why not use that whole screen? And I think the answer is because, well, then they would have had to come back and write some new code and maybe get a different camera, whereas this is just taken from the model previous and it was easy. So that's unfortunate to see, but it is a fine looking camera. Now the one other thing I'll show you is off-road pages here in the Wrangler. It has 3 different pages worth of information, so you get pitch and roll. I like to see you're getting your coordinates down there and your altitude on the bottom of the screen, and they stay there. Here's all the gauges, so if you're off-road, you can keep an eye on everything, make sure nothing is overheating. And then this just tells you the status of your steering, your T-case, and your rear locker, and you can see as I turn the wheels, it tells you exactly where those front wheels are. So yeah, that's it here in the Wrangler. Now let's go see what's in the Honda. Now we're here in the Passport, so first of all, I'll put it in reverse, and you can see the backup cameras. You get 2 different views, sort of a wider and narrower view, and then you're also getting that top-down view, which is nice. And now I'll put it in drive, and I'm going to put it over into trail mode, and that's going to allow us to access this, which Honda calls its Trail Watch camera. Now, frankly, you can get these views when you're not in trail mode. The one thing that's unique are these predictive guidelines. They only show up when you're in trail mode, and you can see how they move there with the wheel. Plus, you can get this view looking forward at your front tires, and that can be very handy for wheel placement when you are off-road. So not a ton of cameras here, but yes, a more comprehensive suite of cameras here in the Honda. Now for other off-road screens, you got to look up here in front of me on the digital gauge cluster, because when you go to trail mode, this screen pops up. You get the compass, your elevation, and just below there, that's actually going to track your elevation history. And you can see here, if I hold the reset button down, it'll actually ask me if I want to reset that history. So that is pretty cool. And then on the right side, you can see I'm getting pitch and roll. And if I go up one, I can also get my torque distribution. So yeah, we don't get off-road pages in the center stack in the Honda. We get all that information over here in the digital gauge cluster. Alrighty folks, now the off-roading begins. So we're going to start here in the Jeep Wrangler, and we're going to keep this thing in 4-high auto. Yes, it has an auto setting, and we're going to keep it in auto, and that's actually probably the most similar between this vehicle and the Honda, because the all-wheel drive in the Honda is auto as well. It's going to send power based on slip and based on where it thinks it needs it, and that's the same as 4 auto. The other reason I'm doing that, because quite honestly, our trails are super dry today. I'm going to go through the ditch crossing right now, and normally this thing is filled with water and mud, but right now it is bone dry. It's been incredibly hot here in southern Ontario the last few days. And I've put this thing into hybrid mode, which means that it will turn the engine on if it needs it, but at this exact moment, I'm running all electric. Still all electric. And I mean, of course, folks, it just breezed right through there. I don't think we're going to learn a lot about the Jeep Wrangler in this video, because frankly, the Wrangler is still one of the best off-roaders you can buy straight from the dealership. I'm more curious to see how that Honda hangs around with this thing. So the Wrangler is more establishing a baseline for a good off-roader, and then we'll see if the Honda can stack up to it. But the testing needs to be done. So now we're going to go through our offset ruts. Again, this is a good test of lockers and articulation. I'm not going to lock up, and I'm going to leave it in auto. And that should be interesting because at some point it's going to lose traction and it's going to need to sort out where to send the power. Now I do have off-road plus mode, but I haven't even turned that on yet. Right now I just want to see what the standard traction control can do in 4-high auto. So here we go. Now this is the other advantage of solid axles. They will always have better articulation than independent suspension. So that's the other thing we should feel here too. And right about now I'm going to lose traction, and let's see what it does. Cool. Okay, well you saw it. It took a beat. A couple of seconds for sure. But it figured it out. Okay, now we're getting to the next point here. Slipping, slipping, braking, boom. Yeah, brake-based traction control. It started to slip, and it had to do some thinking, but within a couple of seconds, it managed to say, hey, here's where we need the power, send it there. And then the fact that the articulation is so good means that I had plenty of contact with the ground to pull me through. So no lockers needed. Again, there's our baseline established. Let's go see how the Passport does. Now here we are in the Passport, and my choices here for sort of four-wheel drive settings a little simpler. I just choose my drive mode. Now I do have trail mode, I do have sand mode, but right now I'm going to keep it in normal, sort of like that Wrangler. I just want to see what it does in normal mode, and if it starts to struggle, then we can use those different drive modes. But yeah, it's definitely worth noting that a vehicle like the Wrangler, you still have the choice between 4-high auto, and then 4-low, which you have to manually engage. Whereas this vehicle, you just pick the drive mode that best suits the conditions, and you don't worry about anything else. Now coming into this ditch crossing, I'm not worried about grip, but I am worried about clearance. The approach angle and the ground clearance on this Honda are not great, especially compared to the Jeep. Let's go ahead and mute that parking sensor right now. So let's see what happened. We're just going to creep in. Cameraman Liam gave me a head nod, so that's a good sign. It's really about coming up the other side, whether my bumper's going to contact or not. It's rubbing a little, but I think it's mostly skid plate. Oh, I'm starting to spin a little too because I'm rubbing. It's gonna hit. Yeah, I can feel it. I can feel the front end starting to dig in. I can push forward another inch, but yeah, no, it's bad news bears. Okay, well folks, there you have it. And yes, you can call me nervous if you want, but I don't really want to damage this Honda. And right now, reversing out is never great for it either. But yeah, we can go ahead and call that a ditch crossing fail just because I wasn't going to have enough clearance. And sure, if I hit that other bank with a bit of momentum, it probably would have made it, but it probably wouldn't have made it without damaging that front fascia. And that's not something I'm interested in doing today. So yes, Honda ditch crossing fail. And I can already tell you that's probably going to be a theme in this video, where the Wrangler has epic approach, departure, and ground clearance. That's the one thing this Passport is lacking. It's the one thing I wish Honda had done a little bit more of. Just a lift kit, Honda. You could have given us a 2-inch lift here, and it would have made a world of difference. So that has already been showing itself. But now on to the ruts. Let's see what happens here. Okay, now offset ruts, and yeah, I'm leaving it in normal mode. I want to see what the all-wheel drive system can do when it's not in trail. And you have to turn the parking sensors off every single time because they're only temporarily muted. That's pretty annoying. Oh, and you can feel the articulation here is way worse. I'm already lifting right away. Also going slow because I'm nervous about my front end. And right about here, we're going to start to get some slip. Come on, Honda. Come on, come on. It's not happy. It's not happy, and my nose is starting to dig in up there again too. Man, so first of all, I could feel that the all-wheel drive system just wasn't reacting as fast as in the Jeep, but now I can also feel that my nose is dragging. So now I'm putting it into trail mode, because hopefully the all-wheel drive can think a bit quicker. Liam's making bad faces, which is bad news. Our clearance is not good here, folks. I'm gonna go take a peek, Ski. I don't want to damage it, unless I already have. Well, what do you say? All right, well, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem. All right, well, that's sad news, folks. We just don't have the clearance here, and I definitely did some damage. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I gotta back it out. There's no other way I'm going through here. There's no better way for me to try and drive out of here. I could go like full passenger, but it's probably not gonna climb out. That skid plate's probably hooked underneath. Darn it, darn it, darn it! I don't like breaking stuff, folks. That's not what we're trying to do here. But it does happen, because anytime you go off-road, there's always a risk that something's gonna break. And yeah, as you see, the clearance here is just not good. Now, I've been through this spot before with other vehicles with poor clearance, but this one's just that much worse. Okay, trying to just creep out of here. But I'm also a bit stuck right now, folks. It's just sitting on that front end. It's coming. I'm gonna get it here, but it's not happy. And we might already be very well at the end of our off-road adventure with this Passport. And there we go. Well, let's go survey the damage. Well, folks, after action report. So you can see I really messed up this plastic front fascia. In fact, there's a lower trim piece of plastic, which is sort of part of the skid plate, and then there's this piece up here, the actual fascia, and they both come together right here on this bolt, and the plastic just simply snapped right off of that bolt head. Now, I think the good news here is that, yes, this is a separate piece from the grille and separate from the upper fascia, so you only have to replace this lower piece, and this piece is going to take the majority of the damage when you are going off-road. So I'm happy to see that that looks like it's easy to replace just one piece rather than having to do a whole bumper or something like that. And then, of course, the steel down here is still good. So yeah, this just points out what I'm sure you already knew, which is this is why steel bumpers in the front and the rear are really valuable off-road, because if you get in a situation like that and you're going to drag on your bumper, you're not going to end up breaking a whole bunch of clips and plastic. So yeah, sadly, I think we've already proven that this Honda Passport cannot hang with the Jeep Wrangler on most off-road trails, but there's still some soft road trails we can go hit and keep on talking about how it performs. So let's get back out there. And back on the trail now here in the Passport. We're just on a very different trail. This is a local unmaintained county road. So yeah, it's an actual road, which means that it occasionally gets graded. Now, it's pretty beat up. There's some big old potholes and there's a couple water holes, little mud holes, but nothing here is going to challenge the clearance of this Passport. And obviously that's important, because that's got to be one of the weakest parts of this package, is the ground clearance and the approach angle. And I was even looking at that fascia in the front thinking, you know what, Honda could have done more, even just with this same clearance, to give us a better approach angle, and they didn't do that. Now, ultimately, I will always say it's the driver's fault. It was me who pointed this Passport towards those ruts and drove it in there. So no, it's not the Honda's fault that it broke. That's my fault. But I'll say that I guess I was prepared to be impressed based on all of the media that Honda has put out on this thing, based on the styling. They just kept saying this is our next step in sort of adventure off-road vehicles. And we know Honda's built some incredible off-road vehicles over the years and still does. So I guess I went into it expecting to be impressed, and on the flip side, I ended up being pretty let down. So anyways, let's go on about the actual performance here on this road. And I will say that the same characteristic that the Passport has on road, it has here, which is that it feels very tight and controlled. And that's a good thing. The body doesn't have all kinds of roll. It doesn't feel loose. But that being said, the suspension is soaking this stuff up okay at slow-ish speeds. Anything over even 20 kilometers an hour starts to feel pretty stiff here. And more so than that, what I've been feeling and hearing a lot of is when the speeds get a little quicker, like I'm doing 30, the tires keep constantly losing contact with the ground as I come up and over these things. The front end or the rear corner will get light, and you can literally feel that tire sort of hop off the ground and then kind of charge back down based on the shock. So it's not very confidence inspiring either. Yeah, even on this road, I would say I don't want to go much more than 20, 25 kilometers an hour maximum. So I guess to summarize, you're probably already getting this feeling, but this Passport is not an off-roader. I would call it a soft roader or a rough roader. I do think the all-wheel drive is pretty good, and the fact that it's got these tires and some protection underneath, it's going to get you a little further than a standard Passport, but straight up, it's just not an off-road vehicle. And I was hoping to answer the question today, can the Passport hang on the trail with the Wrangler? And the answer is a straight up no. But now I do want to go get in the Jeep, and we're going to run this same road and just talk about the differences, because there is no doubt that the Wrangler drives very different from the Passport. Let's go take a look. All right, folks, now here we are in the Wrangler on this exact same road, and there's no doubt it's a very pronounced difference in the suspension. Where the Honda felt tight and controlled, the Wrangler feels loose and kind of floppy as you're going through these big potholes. You can just feel the weight transfer from the body side to side, and sort of the body swaying, independently of the frame. And I think that's it. This is just a result of having solid axles and body on frame construction. Is a very different feel coming through here. And it feels sort of less controlled, and it feels like you have to work a bit harder at the wheel. On the flip side, I'm running at 30, getting up to 40 kilometers an hour now, and it's not bad. Again, in the Honda, the second I hit 30, I felt like, oh my gosh, something's gonna break. I'm really overloading this thing, and that's because the front end and the rear end were flying so much. Oh, there, I just had the rear end come up on me there. But right away I can tell you that the speeds here, I feel like I can hit this stuff at higher speeds, and I'm not maxing out the vehicle. But at slower speeds, if I was to take this at 20, I'd say the Honda actually feels a bit better. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. And that feeling of, tight and controlled versus kind of loose and sloppy, it transfers over to on-road as well. The Wrangler, it's still a Wrangler. Listen, this is still one of the, I would say, toughest vehicles to drive on the road. And I don't want to make that sound like it's hard. It's not. But this vehicle takes a lot more correction in the steering wheel to make it track dead straight, and that's always been true of the Wrangler. It's been getting better every single generation. The JL, that's this current generation, this is the best driving Wrangler there ever has been. It's less wandery than previous gens, but straight up, this thing still takes a lot more work just to cruise down the highway, where the Honda is absolutely beautiful on the highway, takes no work whatsoever, tracks dead straight. The Honda's also much quieter. Now granted, the roof on the Wrangler comes off, and that's still a very unique feature. People love it. So if you want your roof to come off, there has to be a compromise, and the compromise is noise. The Honda is way quieter inside when cruising down the road. The other thing that stands out is the steering here in the Jeep is quite a bit heavier than the Honda, which is kind of subjective. I find myself liking it. I like having that heavier wheel, a little more feeling in my hands, a little bit more feedback. The Honda feels a little over boosted. But again, we get back to that idea of sort of easy to drive versus hard to drive. Because I'm correcting the wheel so much here in the Wrangler and it's heavy steering, it's sort of that combo of I'm always working a heavy wheel, where the Honda, I feel like I never have to do many corrections and the steering's super light, so that makes it come across very easy to drive. Another aspect of the Wrangler I feel like has to be mentioned are the sight lines. They're excellent. I sit up tall. I can really see down right to the front of my hood. I can see my fender flares over there, those flat fenders, which really allows me to know where those wheels are. And yeah, just from the seating position, it feels like a vehicle that's meant for off-roading, because I just have this towering view, which just doesn't feel like that over there in the Passport. So I think the conclusion here is pretty clear. The Jeep Wrangler continues to be an excellent off-road vehicle, one of the best you can buy straight from a dealership. And if you go for the Willis package here, you're getting a lot of great upgrades, like that rear locker back there, like the tires that are going to take you a lot further off-road. And again, none of that is that surprising. I think I'm more surprised today about the Passport. I thought with this new generation, Honda was really trying to push into a new echelon of off-road going SUVs, and it just doesn't feel like that. Frankly, it feels a lot like the old Passport, just wearing new skin. So yes, it's a little disappointing. I thought Honda could have done a little bit more, especially on the clearance end of things. But I will say, if you're just looking for a comfortable cruising commuter that can occasionally come out and hit a dirt road, the Passport does that exceptionally well. Well, folks, we have arrived at the end of this video. Now, there's one more thing going for the Honda, and that is price. Over here, the Trailsport touring model that we have here in Canada is going to cost about mid $60,000 range, around 65. And then over here, this Wrangler 4xe Willis 41 Special Edition has an MSRP of $82,000 here in Canada. So yes, the Wrangler is going to be more expensive. Now, granted, you could buy a less expensive model, and it's still going to be better off-road. But as they're equipped today, you're going to save a lot of money going for the Honda. Well, yeah, folks, that's the end of this one. Of course, I want to hear from you now. So drop in the comments. Let me know which one of these two would you take, the hardcore off-road Wrangler or the soft-road Honda Passport Trailsport. As always, while you're down there leaving me that comment, also don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and then come right back here to Truck King and see what we're testing next. See ya.